if Carney gets in, I think things will very quickly unravel. Because the Liberals have been on a slow degrowth strategy since the Pierre Elliott Trudeau days. It's been the boiling frog. That's why people don't really notice. But you know how Trump's moving really quickly in the United States?
Yeah.
I think Carney's going to move very quick in the exact same way. And it wouldn't take much. It would take opening up the borders. And we just flood people in, which he already said they want 100 million new immigrants into Canada. And the second thing that would immediately collapse Canada is if Alberta leaves.
Karla Joy Treadway, I fucking love you. Let's start there. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here, Jason.
I am really honored to have you. So for everybody listening, Karla makes the best videos. You make the best videos, period. When I first found your stuff, for the first 10 seconds, I was like, oh, this lady's nuts. And then I kept watching and I was like, oh, I get what you're doing. This is satire. But you pull off the oblivious Canadian liberal thing like so perfectly. Like you absolutely nail it. And I've been sharing your videos everywhere for like the longest time. And I found your Sovereign CEO podcast through your work on the videos. And you did an episode called A Turning Point for Canada. That's a recent episode that you released, where it's basically 45 minutes of collapsing Mark Carney's entire history into like one summary, which is absolutely brilliant. I've listened to it maybe 15 to 20 times. So that's my long-winded introduction and my way of just expressing how much I appreciate what you do. Thanks so much for talking to me today.
Thanks for having me here. Oh man, those videos. I just realized that facts don't matter a long time ago.
Yeah.
And those satire reels were just a great opportunity to rattle some cages. And people can argue about facts and opinions all day, but nobody likes to be made fun of. So I just found making fun of people in a pretty lighthearted way, try not to be mean, as a really effective way of getting people to think. Also, at that time, there was so much censorship and we were all getting kicked off the internet and shadow banned, but memes and satire reels, no matter how much they tried to censor, they would just get shared like crazy. So that was the purpose. That and my own lockdown angst maybe is where those things started.
Well, it was like, you know, what my favorite one is the one that you did where you're like, hi, I'm a Canadian, and you're like in front of all these picturesque backdrops and you're just rattling off the most insane statistics of the things that are currently happening in our country. And it's brilliant because it really sends it home, right? Like what Canada has descended into. I mean, as a writer, for my entire career, I've written primarily for American publications and worked primarily with Americans for a variety of reasons, but mostly because Canadians just don't get it for the most part. And I've had people reaching out to me, you know, people that I haven't talked to in like 5-10 years, like, hey, what the fuck is going on up there? Like, are you guys still a country? Are you guys like the Soviet Union now? Like, what's happening? And what's really crazy to me is how everybody outside of this country can see it, but the majority of the people inside can't. Have you experienced the same thing?
Oh, yeah. The first time we went traveling after lockdowns, I think it was Mexico. And anyone that I introduced myself to as a Canadian, the first thing that they said was, oh my God, the truckers. I'm so sorry that that's happening to you guys over there. Without me, like when I'm on vacation, I am not talking about politics. I'm just there to have fun. This is total strangers from other countries. That was the first thing they said. While in Canada, we think it's this Russian-funded Nazi hate movement, but the world knows that it was actually a really good thing.
Yeah, and it's strange because, like, especially recently, like I've been staying away from X and social media in general for the last little while, just because everything is getting so volatile,
Yeah.
and I tend to just post and ghost, because I just don't want to read the comments. I don't want to see the hateful things that people are saying on both sides. Right? This is
Yep.
both sides of the argument.
Yep.
But to me, it just seems like, especially like those still clinging to the left, which happens to be a lot of Canadians, they seem to have like this sadomasochistic tendency. It's weird to me because we can all see what's happening. I mean, like, and I mean that in a micro sense. Like, we can see our bank accounts getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and our debt getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We go to the grocery store and $100 no longer buys what it used to buy. Now it's $150, $200. Like, we're
Yeah.
all feeling the effects of the last 10 years of Trudeau's Liberals. But it seems to me like these people, they just want to self-destruct for the sake of a win.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it appears to me. And we talked a little bit before we started recording about nihilism, and I've become increasingly cynical over the last 10 or so years, and cynicism ultimately leads to nihilism. And so I guess the question I wanted to ask you is are you experiencing that as well? Like, do you feel, as a business owner in this country, as a mom, as a citizen, that we are like past the point of no return to a place where it's like, just go under the water and hold your breath as long as you can?
I still have hope during this election. I think the polls are lying. I think they're inaccurate. I think we're seeing, like, my hope is that we just have a sweeping blue movement. And I understand that the Conservatives also have problems, but I have a lot of faith in them. I think they'd be very, very good for Canada. And I am not feeling nihilistic. If Carney gets in, though, I am. And that's why I made that podcast you're referring to. These are not normal times. I really think this is a pivotal election. I think if the Conservatives get in, we have a chance of returning Canada to some sense of normalcy. If Carney gets in, I think things will very quickly unravel. Because the Liberals have been on a slow degrowth strategy since the Pierre Elliott Trudeau days. It's been the boiling frog. That's why people don't really notice. But you know how Trump's moving really quickly in the United States?
Yeah.
I think Carney's going to move very quick in the exact same way. And it wouldn't take much. It would take opening up the borders. And we just flood people in, which he already said they want 100 million new immigrants into Canada. And the second thing that would immediately collapse Canada is if Alberta leaves.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that that was an actual possibility. I was like, no, just some of the people in rural areas, like, you're never going to get the cities. But it sounds like those numbers are actually quite high, like 40% right now. And Canada's already tipping on the edge of absolute financial collapse. Well, the bulk of our money comes from our energy sector, which is Alberta. If I were Albertan, I would want to leave also. If Alberta leaves, I think that would topple Canada overnight. And we're going to be like Venezuela. And if Alberta went, why wouldn't Saskatchewan also go? Because they're kind of on the same train of thinking. I think that's the spot that we're in. I think, like, overnight things will topple.
I think so too. And I think, every election, especially in the United States, every election is like, this is the election of our lifetime, the most critical election in history. But in Canada, this really is it. And what
I think
scares
it's
me,
it because Mark Carney is the great reset. The thing that a lot of us have been worried about for a long time. When you see his history and you see what he says and you read his novel, you're like, oh, he's that thing that we've all been worried about.
yeah. And I love that phrase. That's actually going to be the title of this episode. Mark Carney is the Great Reset, because he said it a handful of times in that podcast episode, which people listening, if you want to listen to the Turning Point for Canada episode, it's in the description directly below this video or in the streaming description. He really is. And that's what's terrifying. What terrifies me about all this is that he is an architect of this. I refer to it now as neo-feudalism. I had a hard time figuring it out in the beginning because culturally it's very Marxist. But if you drill down on it economically, it's actually fascist in nature, because it's the public-private partnerships that are driving it, right? Mm-hmm. But what they're really moving toward is a neo-feudalism, a place where, you know, the aristocratic class, the top 2%, hold all the wealth, and then the rest, literally the rest of us are serfs. We are reduced to serfs. I mean, we're at the. I mean, people, if you don't know where the bottom is, just wait, because you'll be there in a year or two. Mm-hmm. And so, can you talk a little bit about why you've developed this perspective or opinion on Mark Carney? What are some of the key features that lead you to believe this about him?
Mm-hmm. I'll start off by saying too, like, I'm not a partisan person. I was a liberal for my entire life. To out myself, I didn't really know a lot about politics. I was a liberal because good people were liberals and bad people were the evil conservatives. That's how, like, a lot of Canadians think. That's how I was too. So I've only been doing these deep dives in the last 5 years. So I want to start off by saying that if I actually thought Carney was a person of integrity and would do a good job, I actually have no problem voting liberal. I think he's a terrifying human being. So the first thing that you have to look at, because people think that this is change, right? We were so close when it was Trudeau versus Pierre. We had so many liberal, like, everyone was done with Trudeau. We were so close. It would have been so easy. Like, this whole Trump thing and then sweeping Carney in is what's really screwing us over, because people think that Carney is change, that this is a new government and a new face. And he's been the one advising Trudeau the last 5 years economically, getting us to this horrific position. So that's the first red flag. He's responsible for this terrible place that we're in now. The second thing is he's a liar. He says one thing on one hand, and then his actions do something completely different. So, for one thing, the green agenda in his novels, the thing that he says, he's a climate zealot. It's the most important thing to him. Everything must go back to these net zero policies, his net zero absolutism. He doesn't want Canada to develop its own fossil fuels. However, his companies are invested in fossil fuels in all sorts of countries, like Brazil. So he's promoting these green policies, and then he's benefiting personally from fossil fuel investments in other countries, which makes me think that he's just crushing our reserves so that his company can do well in these other countries. He's the prime minister responsible for collecting taxes and wants to tax us more while having his own offshore tax havens. They just found another one in the Cayman Islands. And who he works with and for, the UN and the WEF. The fact that even his own daughter went to the Tavistock clinic shows, like, what an extreme leftist this man is. And you know how people call people on the right, like, far right extremists, but really it just means that you're a centrist. When I say
rational person,
I don't mean like a liberal. I mean like the most insane far left person that you can possibly imagine. And his ties with the CCP. He is so deep in China's resources and investments. You know, that episode that you did with Andy Lee, just one hit after the other. The thing that just happened with Paul Chang, and then they replaced Paul Chang with a new guy who's wearing a Canadian police uniform while singing the Chinese Communist Party national anthem.
Yeah.
There is nothing good about this man. He wants net zero. He wants degrowth strategies. He'll go up on the podium and he'll say things like, we need to rise our economy up, and we need growth strategies. And yes, I'm going to allow people to develop their resources, and we're going to get rid of the carbon tax. He's saying all these things, but the second that he gets in, he's going to jack the carbon tax back up. He's going to call it something different. He's going to maybe take it off of the consumer and he'll put it on the companies, which ultimately just affects all the consumers anyways. He tells people one thing in English and then says the complete opposite thing in French. Like, everything out of his mouth is a lie right now. And he's a very wealthy, disconnected person. I don't distrust people that are rich. I don't have any problems with people being successful or wealthy. That's not it. There's this disdain for people that don't have money. I don't know if you heard him the other day. A reporter was asking about, grocery prices. And he said, well, I don't even know how much groceries cost. I don't buy my own groceries. Other people buy my groceries for me. Like, he's so disconnected from how the average person wants to live. And that's the scariest thing about globalists and elitists, and he's proudly called himself all of these things, is that they talk about saving the world and they talk about fighting the climate, and it all sounds nice, but I don't think people understand that these policies are only for the people at the top. And that if you really are that much of a climate zealot, the goal is to protect the planet over people. So you actually don't care if people can heat their homes or afford groceries, because that's not actually what they're fighting for. It's change the climate and change the temperature regardless of how many people live. That's a really dangerous person. I mean, I don't know where to go from there. There's just
No, you covered it beautifully. I spoke at length with Michelle Sterling about Mark Carney and his association with the global net zero scheme. And what it all really breaks down to is Mark Carney and Brookfield are making money on renewable energy projects in the West, the cap and trade scams, right? Which is look, the carbon trade, housing, right? Brookfield is invested in a company that makes prefab houses, which people do not buy a fucking prefab house. I'm looking directly at you. Don't do it. Don't buy a house assembled in a warehouse. Don't do it. Just don't do it. But Mark Carney is invested in a company that builds prefab houses, the frames in the warehouse, right? So he's also heavily invested in carbon trades, right? So the point is that Mark Carney and Brookfield make trillions of dollars on all these net zero renewable energy initiatives. On the same hand, they make trillions of dollars on fossil fuel projects in the East, in China. And exactly what you pointed to at the beginning of your previous statement is exactly what's going on. He is going to intentionally tank Canada's natural resource economy in favor of China's fossil fuels, because that's where he's invested. And what drives me absolutely crazy is when I see these cult members, because that's all I can call them, these liberal cult members online who go, oh, all of his assets are in a blind trust. Really? Right. So you also believe that when the Bush administration initiated the Iraq war, Dick Cheney just had nothing to do with all the no bid contracts that were going over to Halliburton, despite the fact that he was previously CEO. Right?
Yeah.
Like, Come on, guys. Do you really think Mark Carney's he's just going to be prime minister for 4 years, and then at the end he's going to pick up a phone and call his finance guy and go, "Where are we at with everything?" Right?
Yeah.
Of course not. Right?
He already
Like, this guy's
knew where that money was going and put it in the blind trust. Sure. Like, these guys they're making phone calls in the meantime. I think he's in it purely for his own pocketbook. I think he's here to get even more wealthy. That's it.
Yeah.
Maybe power, but
yeah. I don't even think it's power. I mean, I think it is, but I think it's to a degree that we don't quite understand. Because when I say neo-feudalism, what I mean is kings and queens and aristocracy.
Yes.
Right. Like it's the 1%, you know, when the Occupy Wall Street protests were happening and all those people were camped out in the park in New York. What they were protesting was something that would be considered peasantry compared to where these people are going.
Yes.
So that's the point, is that it's not just power in a sense where you own the penthouse, you know, in a billion-dollar building in Manhattan. It's aristocracy to a point where you own Manhattan. Not only do you own Manhattan, you own New York City, you own the world. Mm-hmm. And that's where this is all going. And it's incredibly frustrating. You know, something you pointed out on one of your podcast episodes where you're talking about boomers. And I hate to blame everything on boomers, because I love boomers, man. I love that generation of people. But I feel like they really got to experience Canada at its very best. And now that everything is on a sharp decline, they're dug in and refusing to make any changes because they continue to benefit. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, on your perspective? Because it just feels like our generation is being left in the dust.
Yeah. And conservative boomers, I see you. Don't worry, we're not talking about you. We're talking about the liberal boomers. Like, they come by it honestly. So this is my parents. My parents hate what I'm doing right now. They are retired. They watch CBC or CNN all day long. Like, they're busy in their personal lives, but they watch a lot of news. Yeah. My dad was an immigrant from Germany, and the Germans are hard workers. So you come to Canada, you go to school, you get a good job, you get a government job, you work your way up that job. The most important thing about you is your credentials, is your job title. You work hard, you get a good pension. The government is good. You know, my mom was a teacher, pension, and they're both in this position now. You rely on your pension. They were able to buy their house back in the day for, I think it was like $60,000. And now they're being taken care of by the government. So that's been their reality their whole life. My dad worked for healthcare. I guess a teacher is like a government job as well. He was the CEO of Manitoba Healthcare. So when they grew up, it was always good. It was a good thing. The news was always good. I used to think the news was good. I used to watch CBC. Yeah. And no matter what me or my siblings tell them, they can't see any other reality. It's way too shocking. And I made a post the other day that made people very, very angry. It was to the boomers. And I said, it is selfish of you to vote Liberal. It is selfish because you got to buy a house and go on vacation, and you got a pension. And, you know, when I was growing up, I got to ride my bike down the back lane at night, and that wasn't scary. That, like, open your fucking eyes. That is not the reality. It is. Do you know that Toronto is officially more dangerous than Detroit now?
Yeah.
Like, we are in such a savage place here with crime and the economy. Our children will never be able to afford a house in Canada, hence why they're building these like Soviet style housing units under the government. They'll never be able to have a house. So like, they could work their asses off, go to school, go to university, get a high paying job, like, I don't know, like a nurse, and not be able to afford a home.
Yeah.
and then have a group of gangs break into their home and do a home invasion at the same time, and they're like, things are falling apart. And after 9.5 years of this, like, we can't have one more term. So it is selfish to not open your eyes and see what's done. So that's great that you got to have a great life. Your children and your grandchildren, and who knows how long that trend will continue, are totally screwed. And there's no reason to think that policies under Mark Carney will be any different, because it's the exact same government. And he's even more of an extremist and a zealot than Trudeau is. He's not saying that he's going to do anything different. The only different thing is him pretending like he made the carbon tax go away by signing a fake executive order. That should also be red flagging everybody. We don't have that in Canada. So he just lied and spoofed you all. There's nothing different about the policies whatsoever.
I think the only difference is that Justin Trudeau is the frying pan and Mark Carney is the fire.
Yeah.
Right? We're going from 10 to 11. That's where we're going. And that's the part that, look, excuse me, I'm not one of these people who says, well, if so-and-so wins an election, I'm leaving the country. I think that's pussy shit. I don't do that.
Depends on what he does. Like,
right.
Because
but what I was going to say is that in this case, yes, I'm more than likely leaving, because I'm at a point where I have to protect my family and my children, right? And this isn't like the irrational fear of Trump that caused the left to threaten to leave the United States both times. This is a very real fear of things that he has actually stated in an ideology that I don't even think he believes in it. I think he uses as a way to benefit personally. But please, Karla, continue with what you're saying.
Well, like, the one thing that the economy is one thing, but the thing that would make me pack up and leave are the censorship bills. Mm-hmm. Because Mark Carney hasn't lived here in 10 years. He's lived in Europe. Look what's happening in the UK. They're jailing people. They're breaking into their home and stealing their computer and throwing people in jail for Facebook posts. Mm-hmm. That's 100% where Carney wants us to go. He was the one that told the Trudeau Liberals to freeze bank accounts and throw people in jail. So expect that he's going to do more of the same. And it's not this quote unquote hate speech. It'll be critique of the government, because that's what we've already seen that. That's the kind of thing that would make me pack up and leave. The money stuff we can handle. My husband and I are entrepreneurs. We live in the middle of nowhere. We hunt and fish and do all the prepper kind of things. Like, we're fine in that respect. But if having these podcast conversations, or like even making those reels, threw me in prison, and people listening your audience probably gets it, but some people might think that's crazy. I'm like, go and look in the UK. This is what they're doing. And not just like one or two instances, like 3,000-4,000 instances of people going to prison.
I was going to say, Konstantin Kisin brought this to mind for me. I can't remember who he was talking to. He said, do you know how many people Vladimir Putin has put in prison for ideological reasons? 200. Do you know how many people are in prison in the UK right now for social media posts? 4,000. Yeah. We live in this fantasy world, and that's the message I've been trying to send lately. The world as we know it is gone. Mm-hmm. Doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. We're not there anymore. So we can keep pretending. And if you're a mainstream Canadian who only watches CBC and CTV and Global and so and all of the legacy media, and you live in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, you can walk around and keep pretending. But the problem is the walls are closing in. Yeah. And Mark Carney is the stick, he's the fire. So one way or the other, a reckoning is coming. It's coming. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not one of these people who believes that Pierre Poilievre is a cure-all. I don't think he's an easy fix. What I think he is he's at least a sharp left turn back toward a recognizable establishment. Yeah. And I think that's why we have to vote for him, because at least we can get there. We can get back to baseline, and you and I can talk forever about how the conservatives are fucking up here and there, but it's not that the world is over.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really all I'm asking for, is just in the past, I had this, you know, as a member of the left, I had this crazy utopian vision of the world, of what it could be. Now, I just want to be able to like buy groceries and gas and, you know, maybe take my family on a vacation once a year, you know, nothing luxurious, maybe, you know, go to Cuba and sit on the beach for 3 or 4 days. That's all I want. And it seems like we're just drifting further and further and further away from that, you know?
The progressives praise themselves on their intention, but they never look at the outcomes. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you were to ask someone right now why they still support liberal, and you tell them, but you have to say based on these outcomes, they won't be able to give you, like, they want to say things because we're the party that respects women's rights, or we're the party that cares about the climate. Okay, tell me about the policies and the outcomes on the environment. I know I had David Knightleg on the podcast, and he talks about this a lot. There aren't positive environmental benefits from their climate change policies so far. So they don't ever look at those numbers, at the data. And when I make videos about what's actually happening, I get attacked, but also those videos get taken down as misinformation. TikTok is the worst. It'll take things down all the time. People call me a liar when I say the crime in Toronto is worse than Detroit. People don't believe it. They don't believe that 1 in 4 Canadians has food insecurity, while Trudeau sent $11 billion to other countries for gender-related issues. They don't believe that the 5th leading cause of death in Canada is government-assisted suicide. I get attacked for that video, left, right, and center. You liar. And I'll make a quick note here saying I'm a freedom person. I'm totally on board for that being available. But 1/5 of people dying from that reflect something different, right? Like if 1/5 of Canada had like an eating disorder, you wouldn't, like, you're not shaming people with eating disorders. You'd be like, why do so many people have eating disorders? What is going on? Like, that's what that video is about, just about proportion. What's going on there? Those, like, the numbers and the things that we're actually facing are so horrific. Like, they've devalued the dollar into almost like it's like monopoly money right now. Home invasions are up by like 300+%. When you hear about how much of our economy is rooted in Chinese money laundering, people don't believe these numbers because they don't hear it from the media ever.
Yeah. And, you know, I was talking to Mark Cahotis. He's a legendary investor, one of the inspirations for the movie The Big Short. He was one of the guys who saw the financial collapse coming and shorted the Lehman Brothers in 2008. And he said that according to his figures and the data that he has access to, we're roughly 1 in 3 mortgages in Canada is fraud. It's fraudulent. 1 in 3. 1 in 3. We've become, you know, I talk to Sam Cooper regularly. He and I, you know, we talk every couple of weeks. And Canada has become a narco state. We've become a place. It started with Chinese organized crime, but now the Mexican cartels are moving in, because through the examples set between the government and policing and the way that they've policed organized crime, the Mexican cartels see that it's just open season here. So now they're here too. And it's like, wake the fuck up, people. Like, wake up. The dream is over. You know, and I feel like with Canadians, it's like this unwillingness to let go of the dream, and this desire to just maintain just a profound level of apathy, that they just don't want to care, because the moment they do, the moment they start tugging on that thread, they know that the whole thing's going to unravel and they're going to have to deal with it. So right now, okay, we'll just let it be. Maybe it'll get better on its own, but it's not. The cancer is metastasizing.
That's right.
It's just getting worse. And
so we have a lot to fear and a lot of proof Whereas I feel like the things that people are afraid of with the Conservative Party, so the left that thinks it would be do or die with the Conservatives, I don't think those fears are rooted in any sort of reality. Because
No.
you'll hear things like they're going to take away a woman's right to choose. I'm like, show me the policy. They've never said that. It's nowhere in their policy agenda. But they're going to take away gay rights. I'm like, show me. Like the things that people are afraid of, like they're not true. And in Canada, conservatives are barely conservative. Right
Yeah.
now, the conservatives are liberals. They are fighting for smaller government, free speech. They're really for the working man right now. Your average blue collar Canadian that's just trying to afford food. Oh, they don't have social programs. I'm like, show me where that's not true. They just have a different approach to them. So I every single thing that people are scared of with the conservatives, I don't think are based in any kind of reality, just just like a narrative or a feeling about them, where we have legit concerns about the liberals based on the last 10 years, everything they've done, everything they put into policy, and the things that they talk about, increasing crime, increasing border insecurities. They tell us that they're going to do these things and they actually do them. They have horrible results and then they double down on it and pretend like everything's working just fine.
Yeah. And you see, I've had this thought for a while because I see similar rhetoric tossed from one side to another, right? Like, you mentioned like one side's like you're a Nazi, the other side's like you're a commie, and it seems like they're kind of mirror images of each other in terms of the rhetoric. But it's exactly what you said. It's like on one side you have people like us, liberals. I still consider myself a liberal. In fact, I would say that, first of all, guys, Canadians listening, most of the audience is American, so Americans listening too. Canadian conservatives are nowhere even close to Republican. Not even close. Not even like remotely. They've never been. They've always been center left, center right, let's say. But this version of the conservatives, we've experienced the same political realignment that you have in the United States behind Trump. And this version of the conservatives is actually very liberal. They're like the rational liberals, whereas the liberals are like the radical nut jobs. And the people like Karla and myself, who originated on the left, who still hold on to a lot of the values that we acquired as members of the left, we see what's happening here. And there's just no question about it. Like I said, the conservatives in Canada are liberals in conservative clothing and really our only hope of getting back to a baseline. It's our only shot, right? And so, but going back to the rhetoric, I was thinking about that for a while. Like, are we seeing the same thing in each other? And this rhetoric is kind of the product of that. Like, it's just the fear of the other. But I really feel like at this point in time, it's like the rational people and then the crazy people. It's
Yes.
beyond the left right dichotomy. I actually believe that we're in a good versus evil situation. Do you feel like, I know that's kind of reducing it to something very bare, but do you feel it's similar here?
Oh, 100%. And I think this is a spiritual battle too. And it doesn't seem like the left has any line around morality whatsoever anymore. It's just virtue signaling in place of that. So you have that side calling us Nazis and fascists, to which I always say, define fascism.
Yeah.
The side fighting for free speech and small government and less government control.
I know, right?
That's not
Hitler's wet dream. Hitler's wet dream. Exactly what he was going after in the first place.
That doesn't fit. So I don't want to get caught up in the name calling either, but I'm like, but you guys are actually quoting Marx and Lenin in your resources, and you're asking for big government to take more and more money from the people so that they can redistribute. Well, like, you guys actually are communists.
Yeah.
You actually are. So I think that label is totally fair. And so we have the liberals are now socialists. maybe communists, and the NDP has to be further left than the Liberals, otherwise they're totally irrelevant. And that's why you see Jagmeet taking photos with the pup play people and the OnlyFans stars, because he has nowhere
I
else to go. He just got shoved way over.
He's so far left. He's in
Now.
like fucking outer space, right?
He's with like the sexual deviants now. He's got nowhere else to go.
He's just hanging out with the pedos. Like, all right, guys, this is our new
Who are
thing,
people?
our new platform. Yeah. Did you see that horrific video? I don't even know what they were doing, but it was like they were jumping. He was asking everybody at his campaign to jump. And there's a lady there in a wheelchair. And it's just like, you know what I thought? I thought, you know, for a guy who's all about inclusivity, this really isn't a very inclusive moment.
But it's actually so bad that they're becoming irrelevant. Like they're irrelevant. They're getting just completely wiped off the map. It's actually really bad that that's happening, because now there'll be more liberals. It's bad that he's disappearing. So now we have these rich Laurentian elites and globalist bankers with the underdogs and the poor guys, and now they're all one. It's a terrible scenario. Actually, we don't want that. We want the left to split.
Yeah, totally. And not only that, but you know, at the end of the day, look, guys, I know we're in the fight of our lives here, and that we're the good people. At least this just is my perspective. All of the good people that I know are lining up behind the conservatives on this, right? But down the road, as if the conservatives win, and that's a big if at this point, we'll touch on that in a minute, but if the conservatives win a sizable government in Canada, you need the NDP and the Greens and the, you know, those people, because they kind of, they keep things from going too far in the other direction, right? It's all about balance. And that's what this, and honestly, like, I'm not going to lie. I'm from Vancouver. I voted for the NDP as a very young man because I was an idiot, a utopian leftist, right? But, you know, like, you do need them. You need them. The opposition always provides the voice of the conscience when you get a government that's too big or too powerful, right? And so it is hard to watch this guy. And what drives me crazy is, like, I watch them and I'm like, who in the like NDP leadership? Because, you know, there's of course the political leadership, but there's the financial backers who are like the people who are really in charge. How has nobody sat down and been like, okay, guys, Jagmeet, what the fuck? What is going on here? Like, this thing is disintegrating. Like, it just seems like the NDP, and for our American listeners, they're our socialist party. The wheels have just completely come all the way off. And now he's doing videos where he's jumping up and down with a lady in a wheelchair, you know, amidst the crowd, just staring blankly into the camera. Like, we're there now, like, where they're just completely obsolete, right? And so now I want to talk about polling. So this episode is being released 5 days before the election. And so the polls, as we've seen them, the Liberals have polled way ahead of the Conservatives, right? But I was reading about the Angus Reid polling questions, and they're just fucking absurd. Like, they're so biased toward the Liberals that anybody taking the poll, it's virtually impossible for the result of your poll to not reflect a favoritism toward the Liberals. So I want to ask you, is what we're seeing in the polls, is that an accurate reflection of the country, do you think?
Have you ever answered a poll? Have you ever been polled?
No.
No one I know has ever been polled. So that's just like circumstantial, but I know a lot of people are asking that question. I know a lot of people have been doing deep dives, like Mario of the North, and who's actually funding these polls. A couple of them have actually preemptively blocked me on Twitter. I noticed that.
I get the preemptive blocks too. Yeah, here comes Big Bad Karla.
I'm like, I don't even think I said anything about you. I'm impressed. I'm not even mad. So they're all liberal funded.
Yeah.
Or you have like CTV doing their polls, CBC doing their poll. I'm like, well, guess who watches you guys? I
Yeah.
don't know. Like the numbers at Pierre's rallies, like they're just huge. I think a lot of people are getting hoodwinked by who Carney actually is, and that's why I've been trying to make a ton of content just to get this information out about who he actually is. Because CBC's not they have said the odd thing, like the tax haven. However, we're in this like really scary tribal place right now where it's like my side no matter what. It seems like people don't really care what kind of bad information is being pulled up about
Yeah.
Mark Carney. They're just going to choose him no matter what he does or how evil he is.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see what happened in the United States where they said it was 50-50 Kamala and Trump, and then Trump just absolutely creamed her at every
Yeah.
level of government. I think that's what's going to happen unless they cheat. Um, I don't trust this party at all right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they did cheat. I was starting to get nervous the way that they were really pressing on the whole Pierre's security thing, and then there was in the news they were sharing about foreign interference and with Pierre's campaign, and I was like, I think they're trying to do something here beyond just like slander him. And that's what
Yeah.
we're seeing from the left in Canada and in the US is this lawfare thing. That's really dangerous, or censoring your political opponent or jailing your political opponent. Um, I don't trust people like that try and censor the internet and media or creators like you and me. Those people are dangerous. So I don't think the polls are accurate, but we won't know until this very scary day coming up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
And
what? At this point, like, if I don't think Canadians are that stupid, but if they are, I'm sorry, maybe that's what we deserve then. Because
mhm.
the only way through is people actually starving and not being able to heat their home. Like that is the only way to wake people up, is for them to experience more pain. And I really hope we don't have to go through that, but that might be what it takes to actually rattle people awake.
Yeah. And I've been kind of struggling with that myself lately because I feel like Canadians have gotten off easy on a number of occasions in the last 40 or so years since Pierre Trudeau, right? Is that we have come to the brink a number of times, and then at the last second, somebody steps in and bails us out. I mean, even during the global financial crisis, which Mark Carney took fucking credit for in terms of keeping Canada afloat during that time, but he had nothing to do with it. He was just governor of the Bank of Canada. It was actually Stephen Harper's guidance that got us through that, which
Yep.
again is another Carney lie, right?
Yep.
Um, but it does feel like we've come to the edge a number of times, and then at the last second something steps in and bails us out, or the US bails us out, or somebody else bails us out. And now we're at this point where the people who would historically bail us out either want nothing to do with us or on the side of the bad people now. And
Mm-hmm.
like you can kind of see that in the way that Mark Carney has, in not so subtle terms, aligned himself with the EU over the United States, and behind the scenes aligned himself with China. It seems like if we end up with another liberal government, we are going full on into darkness. And, you mentioned this at the very beginning of our conversation, but I just don't see Alberta sticking around for that, nor do I see Saskatchewan. And the truth is that if Alberta and Saskatchewan choose to either separate or become part of the United States, BC has to go, because BC will be completely isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And BC has a huge natural resource economy, and it would be stupid for them to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, without being too alarmist or hyperbolic here, we really are looking at the potential end of our country, right?
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I like how attached I am to that
Me
anymore.
too. Me too.
Because there's no national identity anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean to be Canadian? I was feeling really nihilistic when all of a sudden everybody had a Canadian flag up. One, because I knew how to find all the awake people in the last couple of
Yeah.
years. Like anytime a truck would go by with a Canadian flag, you're like, yes, Hong Kong. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, like, because
Yeah.
that was a hate symbol 2 years
Yeah.
ago, right?
Yeah.
So you knew who your people were. And to see, like, I should have just been happy to see that. You know, my Canadian flag has been up for 40 years. I
Yeah.
had it up way before the TV told me to. It wasn't even a convoy thing. And then to see all these Canadian flags up, elbows up, it feels like COVID 2.0. I'm watching everybody just thinking like, dear God, you have no idea what's going on. And be mad at Trump. The tariffs suck. It's terrible for us. Be mad at Trump. But if you're not more mad at the people that got you to this economically vulnerable position, um, you're not paying attention at all. So be mad at Trump, but if you're not more mad at the liberals and you don't understand that they are weaponizing this crisis for their own personal gain, like Trump dropped the tariffs. We had a 90-day break. What did Carney do? Retaliatory tariffs? Like, how many people know that? Whereas all the other countries right now are cracking deals with Trump. Only China and Canada have retaliatory tariffs back on the United States. I know, he said he's trying to sever our relationship with the US, which is so dumb on so many levels. One, they're our bordering country, they're our army. They're the ones that are protecting us. Like this whole war with the United States, I'm like, how do you have a war with the US? They're our army. No shade on our Canadian military people. I know that you care and are doing your best, but there's not many of you and you're underfunded. Like
Yeah.
America is our army. And it makes sense for us to partner with our bordering country that has 10 times the economy and 10 times the size of military. To go with the EU doesn't seem like they're doing very well right now. So what, are we just partnering up with them so they can bleed us of our resources? I don't know the details to the state of like their economy, their military, but that doesn't really make sense to me to be pairing up. But is that who Mark Carney actually wants us to be in relationship with, or is it China? Because that's who he seems to be deeply embedded with. And
And
this whole Canada as a sovereign nation, we can't be sovereign. We've never been. We
yeah.
have to be tightly bonded to not only, like, I guess, the monarchy, but we have to be in relationship with other countries. The United States takes the majority of our fossil fuels, for example. So we've never been sovereign. We're like the little sibling of the United States. So we're not just on our own. Why wouldn't we be paired up with the bigger partner? And the whole Trump tariff thing, it's not about drugs. It's not about him coming to take Canada, because he could have done that in a day. If he wanted Canada, he could have just come and take us. Like that could have been done and dusted. He doesn't want 41 million, mostly liberals, as part of the United States. But he would take Alberta. And I think the tariffs are because he knows how compromised we are by the CCP. Sam Cooper reveals all of that in his research. He knows our borders are actually not secure. We're only responsible for a tiny bit of fentanyl, but the majority of the terrorists that they catch in their country come through our borders. That's what David Knight Legg spoke to. So he has a lot of reasons for doing what he does, but mostly it has nothing to do with Canada. It's about making America strong, because Trump knows that we're in a proxy war with China right now. We are witnessing the shifting of global powers. Who's it going to be? Is it the United States? Is it Russia? Is it China? And all of these arrangements and powers are moving around right now. So I say that because Canada's not actually sovereign. And Canada has a choice right now. If the powers are all shifting, who do you want to link arms with? And I don't even think the UK is part of that equation. The EU is a part of that equation. I think the choices do you want to be under the boot of America right now or China? Mark Carney clearly wants China. Like, I'd way rather deal with Trump and be attached to the strongest country possible that has way more similar values to Canada than China. I think that's the place that we're in right now.
Yeah. And just to kind of elaborate on that just a little bit, you know, we're in this position where, so Russia invaded Ukraine because of Ukraine's flirtation with NATO. Historically, anytime there is a country bordering a more powerful country that takes on an adversarial position, they are annexed. It's just the way it goes, people. This situation with the United States and Canada is the exact same place. We are taking an adversarial position because we are compromised by China and our affiliations with the CCP. Mm-hmm. So where we sit right now, guys, is if we choose to ally ourselves with the EU or China, we're gone. The United States can't allow it. The US cannot allow it, especially as we inch closer to another global war. They can't allow it. So the message that I'll say in conclusion here is it's the United States or nothing. If we choose anyone else, we're gone. We're annexed. It's over. Canada's gone. So, Karla, I know you have an important call to take, so I don't want to hold you here, but man, I fucking love you. I love everything you do. I'm such a fan. I love the Sovereign CEO podcast. I'm a listener. And, you know, your reels, as I, you know, went on and on and on for the first 10 minutes of this podcast, I love them. I'm so glad you're out there, man. Like the beautiful thing about doing this podcast and I think the circumstances have brought a lot of us together. Yeah. And you're one of those voices that I'm so glad is out there. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. So, Karla, before you go, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Probably Instagram's the best place. I'm Karla Joy Treadway on Instagram, Karla with a K. And from there you can find the podcast, the satire reels, all of the things.
Hi, I'm a Canadian. It's the best. Guys, go to her Instagram, watch it. Also, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, listen to the Sovereign CEO podcast. There is the A Turning Point for Canada episode right below this video or in the description if you're listening on an audio streamer. It's 45 minutes, and Karla condenses like 6 hours worth of information in 45 minutes, but it's everything you need to know. If you're listening to this podcast and you're on the fence, and I mean, I don't think, unless you're hate watching this, listen to that episode, man, because it lays out exactly who Mark Carney is and what he will do. But follow the Sovereign CEO podcast and follow Karla on Instagram. And Karla, I would love to have you back after the election, do a postmortem. Maybe we'll both sit in the dark and, you know, and just lament our anger and sadness, because I have a feeling this is going to be a difficult one. So yeah.
Same. Hopefully we're celebrating a win that day, but otherwise we'll be on the road to Texas filming.
Yeah, I'll meet you in Wyoming. Thanks, Karla.
Jason.